Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Today, the book we're reviewing is AXIOM'S by Lindsay Ellis. Lindsay Ellis is a YouTuber best known for her video essays, and I'm a really big fan of them, and so is Maria. And Maria is my co-host today. Say hello.
Hi guys, how we doing? All three of you?
I don't think we even have that much because I'm one of the subscribers, you're one of the subscribers.
I'm one of the subscribers, and then one of my friends is one of the subscribers.
So both me and Maria really liked this book. Before we start, though, yeah, Maria really loved it. I liked it, but I have a lot of nitpicks. It's still my favorite book we've read since.
Because it's Will.
I mean, again, even books I love deeply, I have a lot of nitpicks with. But Maria, why don't you start us off with the describing the premise of the book?
So the book is a first contact story. We're in 2007. Very nostalgic for my early high school, late middle school experience. It's the Bush administration. The story is told from the point of view of the main character, Cora, who's just trying to live her best normal human life, but she's having a hard time. She's dropped out of school. You find out that her dad is this giant whistleblower a la Snowden, who released this thing called the Fremden Memo, which is about that there might be aliens and that we're trying to study their language, and that he got this from the government, and it caused all this chaos. And there was a meteor crash a month or so before the story began. Cora's family have really distanced themselves from her father. They don't want anything to do with him. Her mom super doesn't like anything to do with him. They all avoid it. She has a tense relationship with her mother. And then first day of the story starts, she's at her new job, and then another meteor strike happens. Turns out aliens! And an alien pops into her house and looks at her family's computer, and she's like, are they after my dad? And that's the start of the story.
Right. And then very quickly, the relationship between the main alien called Ampersand and the main character, Cora, becomes really the focus of the book. And when I say the focus of the book, that's underselling it a little bit, because this is clearly a relationship the author is super into, which she had a video on
My Monster Boyfriends.
Right, yes, The Shape of Water and Beauty and the Beast and that kind of thing. And it talks about the appeal of these kinds of relationships. And you get the sense from it that she really likes that kind of dynamic, and that is very much on display as Cora and Ampersand become very close.
Emotionally intimate.
Emotionally intimate.
We
yes.
get vague physical intimacy, but nothing sexy. Get your minds out of the gutters. At least
not yet.
Not yet. Ayo.
Yeah, his fingers can manipulate into different shapes. So that's all I'm gonna say. That's all I'm going to say, that I feel that will be explored deeply in the sequel.
The minute he says stuff like that, it grosses me out, but I'm so here for it, in concept. The minute he's finger dildos, I'm like, But emotional intimacy between this giant beast and this young girl, I'm like, ooh. So I very much like Lindsay Ellis, and a lot of girls very much Beauty and the Beast. My favorite Disney movie. It was a fairy tale that resonated with me. And I was one of those where oh God, what's the word when you relate to a character? Oh, I related to the Beast.
Have fantasies about being Belle?
No.
The castle?
No. I meant I related to the Beast as well as Belle. No, I in myself was both characters.
Okay, all right.
So monster boyfriend stories are my jam, and I went into this about maybe an hour, 3 hours into the audiobook. I was talking to our other normal co-host, Katie, and she's like, how's the book going? And I was like, actually, I'm really enjoying it. She was like, is there any romance? And I was like, none. None. There's not even a character for her to fall for. And
boy, were you wrong.
Boy, was I wrong. And happily, as it started happening, I was like, Lindsay, what have you done for me? And it was great. I enjoyed it very much. Will thinks the relationship between Ampersand and Cora was a little too much.
Well, we'll talk about it. Basically, I think the thing is, Lindsay Ellis has talked before about how she's written fan fiction, specifically Transformers fan fiction, I think is what she jokes about. I don't know how serious she is. And the book to me feels very fanfic-y in terms of the strengths of that genre of writing and the weaknesses. Now, fan fiction is generally looked down on as an art form. I don't. I've written fan fiction. I've read fan fiction. I think there are things fan fiction does better than original fiction, and I think there are weaknesses to it. I've actually been kind of spoiled by fan fiction because now it takes me a long time to get into books, and I'm like, I don't get it. I don't immediately identify with these characters. This is starting too slow. But in the case of this book, so it takes the form of fan fiction in that it's very focused on this one emotionally intimate dynamic between two characters. And that is a real strength of the book. I felt like it was a little too indulgent in it. I would have preferred if it hung back a little bit more and it just insisted on it a little less, but I liked it. Not as much as Maria, but I did enjoy it. At the same time, I think the weaknesses of fan fiction is like plot. And I feel like this book has some plot issues. I really didn't like the middle third. It just felt slow, and we can get into that more. But I think part of it also is that you can just tell this is a book written. She wrote what she wanted to write, and unlike Iron Widow, which was writing what she wanted to write but problematic, this is not problematic.
No, as much as you would think a 900-year-old alien and a 20, how old is she? 22, 23? She's early 20s. Year old girl could be problematic. That's not the potential problems with the book. But so to discuss the plot a little bit more and because I will agree, Will was like, I think it was too indulgent with Ampersand and Cora's relationship. And I was like, no.
I don't sound anything like that.
Shut up. And I was like, no, shut your whore mouth. You don't know what you're talking about. And then he was like, the plot was a little, back burner. And I was like, that's right. That I'll give you. So I'm biased in a lot of ways because the story hits a lot of sweet spots for me, but I'm also I can be critical of it. And so the issue is you have this relationship between Cora and Ampersand, and how it starts is Ampersand needs to find the Fremden alien group. They're the group that Cora's father released that memo about, and apparently they've been on Earth longer than Ampersand. He came here to find them. By golly, he's got to try to do it. He figures out how to decode human language. He makes a
text-to-speech algorithm that he implants in her brain so they can communicate.
Yeah, he starts trying to kidnap people and get this to work. And he ends up kidnapping Cora. And you think he's going after Cora because somehow he's interested in her father, Nils Ortega, the Snowden character. But it's not. Her aunt, Luciana, worked with the Fremden group. She was one of the people who used to work for the organization Rosa that tried to communicate with them, took care of them. And he was trying to find her so that he could try get into her brain to find out where the Fremden group was being held. Through that, Cora ends up getting mixed up in this. He takes Cora, has her try break into Google
in the most awkward way possible, and it's hilarious.
She spends the first third of the book in this hysterical maxi floor-length tiered chiffon dress from the 70s, and that just... it was hysterical.
Yeah, because she can't find a replacement anywhere.
And she's dirty. She's at Google looking like a 70s hobo. And it's this moment where you get this alien's smart, but this alien don't know what he's doing. He doesn't understand human relations.
And what's really cool is because she describes it as a text-to-speech mannerism, in the audiobook, it's the voice actress is doing a text-to-speech rendition in her voice, and I really liked that. It felt really cool. And in general, I felt like the world building of the aliens is
fantastic.
The second strongest. Well, actually, for me, it was the strongest element of the story. But it's a really strong... Because so many aliens are just people with weird foreheads, a la Star Trek. And even when they look different, they don't think different. But these aliens think so differently. And that differentness is kind of a large part of the plot and the themes of the book. Yeah. And I loved it. As somebody who hates when robots and aliens are written as people, I love the ways that Ampersand is strange in how he thinks, what he thinks a person is, how he thinks you should go about things. The fact that he maybe sees Cora more like a pet for the first half of the book, if not the first 2/3, and she doesn't quite realize it. I cannot overstate how much I enjoyed that aspect of the book.
There's this great scene that kind of plays into this where Cora wakes up. She has no idea how. They were in a place, now she's in a different place. She doesn't know where she is. They had a car, the car's gone, and it's Ampersand on a rock being consume. And she's like, what? And she sees a grocery bag just filled with a bottle of, I think, vegetable oil or canola oil, olives, a can of creamed corn, and I think that was it. And so this guy literally just stole someone's groceries. He was sustenance, enough calories, good job. And Cora is trying to eat oil, creamed corn, and black olives. And he's just in the background, consume. And she's like,
yeah, he does not.
Yeah, and she's like, I can't open this. Like, what, like, velociraptor claws do I not have? Like, what do you want? And so that was really great, and I'll talk more about that. I want to focus on, like, the plot for now because, like, the alien species stuff is fantastic, and some of the things that really, the themes that get brought up through that are really great. So there's the two plots that are happening. And what Ampersand's trying to do and what the American government's trying to do. Ampersand is just trying to get to the Fremden group and get their genome, which is their genetic material, and get them off planet. They are refugees from it's not an ethnic cleanse. What are they?
It is essentially an ethnic cleanse, but they call it a genetic purge.
A genetic purge. His group.
Because there's the alien society is very caste-based and very genetically caste-based. So for them, like, okay, you can just wipe out a genetic line, and that makes sense in terms of pruning the species.
Yeah, and he and the Fremden group are part of this group that needed to be genetically purged. They escaped to Earth, but now this other alien, who is termed Obelisk in the book, is a coming, and he needs to get them before Obelisk gets there and get them off. And then you have the American government, and Lindsay Ellis, I read this interview with her, said that she wanted a first contact story that wasn't like hellfire, brimstone, battle, military, but was instead like the American government just mishandling the whole thing in the worst ways possible.
This is where one of my issues with the plot comes up. So I did not love that the middle section of the book where they're just hanging out with the CIA and she's like translating and they're learning things. I feel like her character became really passive during that time period. I really would have preferred if they had stayed on the run, her and Ampersand, for a while longer. There would have been more chance for action, and like she would have done stuff because she would have had to do stuff.
Yeah.
And the other thing is Lindsay Ellis is not Michael Crichton. She's not really great at writing government officials who feel official. Like, she's great at writing aliens that feel alien. She's not great at writing things that feel plausibly like the head of the Department of Defense talking.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? There's an extent to which that side of the book I don't think totally works.
And it felt almost too easy. So to give context for those of you who might be listening to this and not have read the book, I don't know why you would do that, especially since we have...
You mean your one friend?
Yeah, my one friend.
Who's listening?
Hi, Nick. They're briefly on the run. She decides to bring Ampersand to her aunt Luciana because once she figures out what Ampersand wants, she realizes the best way to do that is to get in contact with the government and try get them to take Ampersand to the Fremden group and help him out. And so she goes to her aunt who has contacts. She contacts the CIA. The CIA takes them to a secure location and is like, okay, we'll bargain with you because we would like this to go away. The government's big focus.
It is an election year. We would like this to go away quietly. And specifically, it's the Bush administration, which is hilarious.
Hilarious. Because they're like, we can't let because the president knew about the Fremden group, a whole bunch of government people knew, and it's already come out that like the Fremden group is a thing. What is the Fremden group? We don't know. Did the president know? And so they're trying to like not ruin the reputation of their government at this really like, we were about to have the economic crisis of '08. Like all this.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing. The crash happens prematurely because of it.
Yes, exactly. Because it ends up coming out anyway. So they decide like for the benefit of the government, they're just going to let Ampersand do his thing and leave. Call it good because he's like the super the superorganism.
The superorganism is what they call their culture.
The superorganism will never come here. They will never visit Earth again. They have no reason.
That is an uncannily accurate.
Yeah, you're welcome. And they're like, yeah, that checks out. We believe you. And so like that part for me just didn't like. They just let this alien walk around this bunker You know, he gets to do stuff, and their only requirement is that he has to create a communication system so they can understand Pequod phonemic, which is the language that the Pequods is what the whole alien race is called. The Fremden group is the group that is being genetically purged.
And then there's also the amygdalans, which I thought was a term for the whole species.
It is the whole species.
Okay, yeah.
So yeah, he makes a system. He tells them you should not have a communication system. Once you start communicating, shit goes bad. And it does a little bit. There's another sci-fi book I read called, the first one is called The Three-Body Problem. The second one's called The Dark Forest. I can't remember what the whole series called, but it's really famous. It's really good. And in it, there's this idea that another intelligent species in the universe, if they find another one that is either advanced enough to cause harm or could be advanced enough to cause harm, they're immediately going to kill you. So it is best to stay hidden in the dark forest. So the universe is a dark forest. You eat something or kill something before it kills you. And that's the basis of all the alien interactions in this series. And I've always found that to be the most realistic idea of what contact with an alien species would be like. For me, that's what I think would happen.
Well, and specifically what Ampersand says is that inevitably the two cultures are so incompatible. I have an English major, but it's a bachelor's. They're so incompatible that they will essentially, like polar opposites, they will try to force the other, well, not like polar opposites, but they will try to force the other just through the natural process to become more like the other, and there will be conflict in it. And that, to me, it's interesting because he uses the example of the Native Americans, right? I actually don't think that's entirely accurate, because Native Americans and the Europeans had at their heart the same fundamental values of, like life is important. And then there are civilization layers on top of that in very complex ways. But for the amygdalans, they actually just might come from different base principles to begin with. And so they are incompatible in a way that a human civilization would never be meeting another human civilization. And specifically, there's such a strong genetic cast bent to their society that the amygdalans almost like have to do what they were bred to do, which comes in later with Ampersand, who was kind of like a senator essentially in his culture. And it's kind of hinted at later in the book that like he can't not try to rule and be at the head of a hierarchy, because that's just what he is. And so as the book goes on, the tension becomes like, okay, we're diverging from an ability to understand and work together. And
I really like that. And that's what Ampersand says initially, but then it comes out more like Dark Forest style of, if the superorganism realizes that humans can actually advance to be a threat, they're just like, you're gonna get nuked. You're done. They're gonna
glass the planet.
Yeah, they already did that too. There's another. So Ampersand's alien civilization has two other alien civilizations that came from a common ancestor. One of them they called the Transients,
who are basically barbarians,
who are like the barbarian aliens. And they nuked their planet. Like, they found the planet, they said, we don't like this, and they just destroyed the whole thing.
Well, so the Transients are supposed to be like humans in that they're kind of like locusts. They come in and
They drain
a planet. I mean, I don't think a locust per se, because he says it's like humans, and that's not quite. But basically, they come in and to the amygdalan viewpoint, drain a planet and make it kind of like useless. And then the other species we don't really hear a lot about, but is referred to as post-biological, which means they're probably ascended robots.
So it's this interesting setup of like what this relationship should be with the aliens. But again, I don't buy that the humans would just be like, yeah, you can leave. And then there's a certain point where they're like, when are they leaving? Things are getting really tense out there in the political atmosphere. And I feel like there's a level of, it needed to go one of two ways. Will pointed out something about Cora as an empathetic representation of humanity. Like she represents humans' capacity.
Well, to give background for a minute, one of the things Ampersand finds kind of fascinating about her is that at one point he is knocked unconscious, and instead of killing him or leaving him, she takes her with her in a van to get to someplace safe. And as he says later, none of his species would do that. That's just not a thing they do, unless like you're specifically within their like little family clan. And then even then, I'm not sure. I think so. Yeah, because they really do care about that.
The book either needed to have like more happening with the relationship with the government, either where it was more hostile, or there was other humans that showed empathy to show the difference between the Pequod group and humanity. Because, like Will said, a great thing was this idea that like Cora and humans are more empathetic, and that's one of their strengths. But she's really the only character that we see being empathetic.
And it's kind of framed in a shippy way in terms of like they have this connection that like, again, I understand from a shippy perspective why they did it, but I think it's more interesting to say from a human perspective that, because I don't really like when humans get shit on all the time in sci-fi.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Like I liked better the idea that there are certain ways we're morally superior to the, I keep wanting to say amphetamines, but that's not what it is.
Not the word.
It's amygdalins. Well, as they are superior in other moral ways or just different.
That for me was one of the issues with the plot, because it really became, and Will said this, and I do agree, the whole middle section where they're in the government bunker and the government's like, teach us the language, let's learn some stuff about you. Cora, get some information for us. It feels like, a situation has been created where these two characters have to interact, and their relationship can go from purely business, which is what it was when they enter the, like, he won't get closer than 10 feet to her because humans eat meat and his people do not eat meat, and they think it's real weird.
Well, and the last time they encountered humans was right after the Black Plague, so that's their baseline for human behavior.
Real intense.
And they don't get that, like, we evolved super quickly as a species, so to them that's not, like, 1,000 years ago is not a long time at all.
But so the entire middle section just feels like it exists to give them reasons to communicate and have to be in the same room with each other, which I think you could have easily done having them be on the run and having other things happen. And once they get to the bunker, her aunt gets like arrested again, like extra arrested.
I thought you were going to say bitchy, but okay.
No, because her aunt like just disappears for the middle third of the, like, she's in the beginning during the part where she's on the run with Ampersand. Aunt is not there, but then she comes back, they go to the bunker, and then the aunt just poof, gone again for a huge middle chunk. And it's literally her, the other scientists, and Ampersand in the Fremden group, and the annoying CIA guy named Saul.
And I think the problem, this is a good off-ramp to talk about how I did not love Kara as a character. Or Cora as a character. I liked her better in the last third when she's doing stuff, but I felt like she was... So the thing is, she is really high-strung and anxious throughout most of this book, and like just on the verge of a mental breakdown. And that makes sense for a 23-year-old dealing with these things happening in her life, but it doesn't necessarily make a great character. And sometimes I felt like it was dialed up a little bit so that Ampersand could be more comforting to her, almost more like a hurt comfort type thing. And like she was made a little bit more passive than, not even passive, just weepy. And again, I think part of the problem is that in the middle third, she can't do anything really. And in the last third, she also can't really do a lot because the amygdalins are so beyond the human ability to even affect. It's kind of like the problem a lot of kaiju movies have, where it's like, okay, an individual character can't do anything against a kaiju. Pacific Rim fixes that with giant robots, and Iron Widow fixes that with stupidity. But in like Godzilla, like one human character can't affect a kaiju, because then that breaks the whole plot of the story. And so there's a certain extent to which in the last third, like she can't really do anything, and so she becomes very reliant on Ampersand. And I didn't love that.
I feel like in the last third, she starts being more active again. I liked Cora as a character, as a girl who had previously been 23 or 22 or 21, whatever her age is. I sympathized with her a lot. I know people like her, and I just liked some of the ways like she processed things. But I can see why. I completely can see why that would not be like a universally easy to associate with.
Well, I'm also less of the insert. Like, she's kind of a bit of an author and reader insert, and I'm not a female, 23-year-old female. Shocking. I know, spoiler alert. So, like, I understand there's a certain extent to which she is an insert and I'm not the insert she's designed to identify with. Yeah. But and also I felt like her family drama was a little tacked on.
That's the one thing. So I can forgive the lack of plot because I was there for the ship stuff, but I actually liked the dynamics and some of the issues that were presented with her family. And to give a little background to that, her mother and father married because he got her mom pregnant, and it was a shotgun wedding because both sides of the family were Catholic. So it was never like they were in a deep love affair. He started making decisions to further his like leak business, and his mom was like, I ain't having it. Then you have the aunt, and she worked for Rosa, and everybody like immediately once Cora finds out her aunt worked for Rosa, she thinks, oh, it must have been her who gave Nils, her father, the leak. It absolutely, and it's something that comes up over and over again. Did Luciana give Nils, like, was she his connection for the leak? And she claims the whole time that she isn't. And there was a point where I almost believed her, but then at the end of the book, there's a narration point where Luciana says something, and Cora's like, she doesn't even seem to believe herself. And then Cora pretends that she believes her, but she doesn't. And the other thing is, like, her siblings and her mother play a big, I don't want to say a big part, but a significant part in the first like 40, 50 pages. And then they get taken into government custody, but they never pop back up in the book until the very end. And again, I liked her family dynamics. I liked the potential family drama that was there. And I just wish it had been explored a little bit. And there hadn't been fridged so much.
I agree. So I should restate my position, which is that I actually think all of this family dynamic is interesting and good. I just think she should have dialed down the weepiness like 30%. I think it's just a little too like, again, it feels almost like the author wanted Cora to be in this extremely emotionally vulnerable place for her and Ampersand to comfort her. And it didn't quite feel earned. It felt a little bit too much like, I want my character to be traumatized so we can do the hurt comfort thing. Again, I think if you dial it back like 20 to 30%, I think it works a lot better.
I mean, I get that. For me, the only scene where she's really super weepy is the file cabinet scene. And so context, she's been in the bunker for like a week and a half, and she's alone. Luciana's been rearrested, not there again for like the second time in the book. And she has like a little mental breakdown. She finds out something that her father did again, and she just has like an all fall down moment. And she ends up hiding in a cabinet, just sitting in the cabinet crying. And Ampersand comes in, and he opens the cabinet door. He looks at her, and he says, "Are you nesting?" And she's like, she doesn't know what to say. So she says like, yeah, and she rationalizes that maybe he thinks I'm like just trying to find like a comfortable space. So he closes the door, and he like goes off, and he comes back with like sleeping bags and pillows. And he like there was this point earlier in the story where she was like, and don't you ever touch me without my consent. And so something that comes up over and over again is at this point he asks her.
Yeah, he seems to have thought it was like a really important human taboo, whereas she just meant like, you're a weird alien, I don't want to get touched type of a thing.
So he asks her, do you consent? And she's like, I guess so. And he like,
I'm getting shivers at how accurate a voice that is. It's crazy.
He lifts her out, lays all the stuff down, puts her back, arranges it around her, and then just is like, are you good? She's like, yeah. And then he closes it, and then he comes back later, and he's like, I realized that since you're my interpreter and I'm using you, I'm responsible for you, and I've done a bad job. And it's like a pet owner being like,
I have not been like reinforcing your emotional state or something like that.
And so he starts asking her like how to comfort her. And so that scene is particularly weepy, but I'm fucking here for it.
Again, I think I told you this earlier. I'm here for it, that it begins to feel a little sickly sweet, and it's like candy.
A little gratuitous.
For me, it's a little bit like eating too much candy where you start to feel a little sick. That was me.
This was a part for me that was super fan fiction-y, because when I would read fan fictions when I was younger, I don't currently. It's one of the big differences. Will and Katie have a huge, they've read a lot of fan fiction. I have not.
A lot. I went through a period like a year and a half ago where I just read a lot and I wrote a lot, and that like got me back into reading and writing. And so are you going to write for this one, Maria?
No. So for me, when I went to fan fiction, it's because I wanted that intimacy, that the extra just like like I didn't just want a taste of the candy. I wanted the whole bag.
You mean the whole plate? Remember that's her series on the Transformers?
Yes. That is
There's a reference to that in the book. It's really hilarious.
I wanted these stories, I wanted these romances to be expanded upon, and I wanted to see the affection in ways that you don't normally necessarily get in the original fiction or the TV show or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's very true. That's a big portion of the role of fan fiction.
Exactly. And like a lot of fan fictions is literally just a scene of intimacy. Like that's it. Like congratulations, here's a one shot. It is a scene of intimacy, which wasn't the kind I was there for. I wanted like my story. Like I like 50,000 words
Hardcore smut.
plus. No.
Of hardcore smut.
No. But anyway, so all of those scenes for me felt like I got the feeling when it was being read to me by the narrator that I did when I would read those fan fictions I really liked when I was younger. That like indulgent, comforting, tiny bits of intimacy. Because it's literally like at a couple points he just strokes her head from like her hairline to her ear because she tells him to. He says, "How do I comfort you?" And she's like, "Well, if you do this, it's comforting." And then he's doing it weirdly, and she's like, "No, do about like 10 inches, 5 seconds on, 5 seconds off." And he
does that precisely.
And he does that precisely every other time. But every time he'd say to her, like, "Do you consent?" And he was asking to touch her, and you realize like it was to comfort her. Ugh. My little heart. So like I understand it completely is indulgent. Absolutely. Thinking about it in a rational headspace, it does give me a toothache. But I loved it.
I fully understand. Again, for me, dial it back like 20%, make me chase a little bit more than give it type of a thing. I would have liked it more, but again, you can tell this is a book she wrote for her and people who like what she likes, and there's a certain honesty to that I really respect, and I think make certain criticisms of it. I think a criticism of the plot is a lot more valid than a criticism of the relationship.
Yeah.
I think the relationship does exactly what she wanted it to do and is exactly the way she wanted it. And I do like it. I wouldn't write it, but I might read it.
As we did.
But what is really cool about it is how dangerous and strange, even late into the book and their closeness and relationship, he still is.
Yes.
Part of it is because certain things are revealed about his character. There's some good plot, not even twists, just plot reversals and movements that are really cool. And you really get like the sense that like you can't quite figure out what is going on with him internally because he's an alien and he's strange. And so I really liked that because I don't like when characters that are strange or dangerous are defanged very quickly, which is a problem. It's like a hard balance to make a reader really feel like not that Ampersand is dangerous, but like for the romances where it's like the dark, violent man who's kind of dangerous, but the girl still gets with him and stuff. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of times those are defanged way too quickly, and it's hard to make the reader feel like, okay, no, there's actually something sharp here. Yeah. Whereas in this case, she was able to keep that even late into the book.
And it's great because this connects to something that I mentioned earlier, which was the alienness of the aliens. At no point, like Will said, does Ampersand stop feeling like an alien. And there were times where I was like, I have no idea what this guy is doing. Like, what are you doing, Ampersand? So you find out later in the book. So he lies. And at first, I don't know why, but I just assumed he wouldn't lie as an alien, but he lies by omission a lot. Like when he was like, the superorganism will never come here, what he meant was, provided they never find out how advanced you are and that you can talk to me. And like, so what he meant is like, no, if it gets back that you guys have advanced this much, you're toast. But he didn't say that. And so you discover that stuff and finding out some of the stuff that he lied.
One interesting thing I thought about that I don't think the book brings up, but again, because the not amphibian. Why do I keep wanting to say the amoebian? It's not amoebian either. It's amygdalin society is so genetically based that you think that maybe there's a certain amount of not manifest destiny, but built-in destiny they see to like he has picked a time that he will die, right? Because they are in that like post-scarcity, post-biological reality society. So I thought there was a certain extent to which he was just like, yeah, someday your species is going to die, and that's the way of things, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I thought that was like a cool just little thing.
Yeah. He makes a point earlier in the series, again, during the part where they're talking about language, where two alien species will never truly be able to understand each other, and they're always going to try anthropomorphize vice versa.
And change the other and get rid of the incompatibilities.
And this thing happens at the end where he is put in a situation where, so Obelisk comes down. Obelisk is a giant motherfucker. Obelisk is what Ampersand.
Ampersand is large. He's like, I don't remember how he's much larger than a human, and Obelisk is like huge.
Obelisk is a similar. So Ampersand is like the technocrat. He's the senator type. Obelisk is the like muscle class of this group. He's also a technocrat, or whatever their term is, but he just like he's muscly. And funnily enough, I don't know why, but prior to Cora giving Obelisk the he pronoun, Obelisk was always just a girl in my head. Like I don't know why, I can't explain it. But anyway, Obelisk is coming to get the Fremdens, get their genome, fuck shit up, and he's potentially dangerous, though he's not here to fuck with humans. And the whole time you think of him as the enemy, but you find out that they're pair bonded. They're symphiles. So early in the story, you find out that like this race of aliens can have familial bonds, but they're not genetic. You choose people that you they don't call it pair bonding. They call it
fusion
bonding.
Something
fusion.
Fusion bonding, I believe.
Fusion or fusion bonding.
Because they don't have kids like normally
No.
anymore. They're basically just a fully genetically engineered race.
So you create family bonds, you create symphiles, so your symphile is your family, but you add people to it by fusion bonding with them. And you find out towards the end that Ampersand and Obelisk are symphiles, because he's like, hello, beloved. And you're like, beloved who? The fuck? What, Ampersand?
I really liked that word choice, because it's like there's just something really perfect about it to reflect the alienness of their bond. I liked it in that it really gave a sense of like, okay, these are not sexual or romantic relationships, but there is still a sense of like my file or whatever. There is a closeness and intimacy to them. And I really like that. I also really like the way that clearly they are beloved, but like they also they're not really close or kind to each other. They value the other's existence, but they're not really kind. It's a very interesting. I actually really liked the way that was written. The relationship between the two,
because it felt like
there's still also there's also a little bit of a schemingness to it. Like, okay, and a part of it is that they're on different sides of things, but like they seem to think it's pretty okay to manipulate the other so long as it's for the other's good, or there's a lack of emotion to it that I think is really, really interesting, and I really enjoy.
Yeah.
Again, the aliens are just written so well.
They're so well. And so there is, like, I got the sense that, like, Obelisk and Ampersand might have been super close once upon a time, because, like I said, they've known each other for a while, but when the Great Genetic Purge was happening, Ampersand like Fleed ended up getting caught by the transient peoples for a real long time, and he was held prisoner by them. So he has a lot of trauma. Ampersand has his own trauma that he's dealing with. But Obelisk decided to hide the fact that he was part of the Fremden group that needed to be genetically purged, and started helping them trying to genetically purge the other people,
to hide the fact that he should have been part of the
exactly
purge.
And so it got the sense that like maybe they had been close once and maybe been nice to each other once, but now like they loved I don't want to use the term love, but they have like that bond is there, but like they maybe they don't necessarily like each other in this moment.
Yeah, they're estranged beloveds.
Yes, which
again, beloved I thought was just a very good term for it, because it has all kinds of connotations that are weird but kind of correct for their relationship. Okay, another side note, why is it set in 2007? Like I thought it was fun, but like it is a weird decision. There's no particular reason for it.
I don't know, maybe because she was trying to tell a story about the US government fucking up First Contact really bad, which again, I think she should have leaned into more.
Okay, that's another thing, is that I did not love the ways that news kept happening outside the bunker and she heard about it. Like it just made her feel even more passive and removed, and it was like a little info dumping-y in that like, okay, and then this happened in the outside world, and then this happened,
Yep.
and then Neil said this and that, and I thought it was just removed a little bit, which I didn't love.
Back to my point about Ampersand. So
the important part of this book.
Yeah, you find out like Obelisk is his symphoile, and he won't let Cora. There's a point in the book where Cora has the chance to kill Obelisk, and oh boy, does she try take it. And Ampersand can't, like, and he's talking to Obelisk, and you're like, wait, are you on Obelisk's side? Like, I can't tell what you're doing, and like Cora can't tell because she doesn't know what the fuck he's thinking. And so I thought that was done really well, but like he's not on Obelisk's side. You eventually realize like he is trying to just trick him.
I think another part of it is that they have such a taboo against killing what they consider to be a person. Like each of them have like a little retinue of genetically lower amphibians, And so amygdalans. And so like they don't really have a problem with them dying, but other people of their high caste who they consider more people, they do, I think, have a very strong taboo against killing, because he had to kill some of the transient barbarian versions when he escaped. And like that really traumatized him in terms of that. So that's how I read it.
See, I read it as, because when you fusion bond, I don't feel like that's the right term, but anyway.
It's fusion something.
It's fusion something. When you do the fusion, the person literally becomes a part of your mental headspace. And because there's one point where she's like, he's trying to explain to her that like it hurts to have someone, because his other symbiote was Jeffo, who died before the book started, or like the day before the book started. And it's mentioned that like it hurt, and there is like, and he says to her when she's like trying to kill Obelisk that like, no, this is pain. Like you lose a bit of yourself. Like you take them into your mind, their energy becomes part of that. You're constantly.
She's very clear that it's not telepathy, but it's completely telepathy.
You can't read each other's mind, but you can sense each other and communicate with each other.
Okay, yes.
So losing Obelisk is going to be painful one way or another. And this was the moment where you could read potential love into him. Because he literally like throws Cora across the room to keep her from delivering the final killing blow. And while this is happening, she starts getting images of Obelisk's anatomy and where, if you were going to try kill him, it would be the best place to kill him. She also realizes she can hear ampersand in her head, even though the little translator tracker thing has been taken out. She's not connecting this just yet, but I was beginning to connect things.
Well, literally as soon as they said fusion bonding and that it's a third form of like high communication, I was like, oh yeah, this bitch is getting it by the end of the book. That's what's going to happen here.
And so it does end up happening where he's put in a position where the tracker's taken out of Cora. He wants to save Cora. Like he's developed some sort of attachment to her. And so his only choice is to very quickly, before she gets taken away, fusion bond with her. And it's fundamentally like he didn't think it would affect her at all. He thought he would be the only one who would get any effect from it. But it did. She now can like get images from him and can hear him in her head. And now has this deep, like she didn't want him to leave before, but now it's like, she describes it almost like an addiction, where if like he left her, she'd be really fucked. And so it ends up coming out where like he pops up and he's like, yo, how you doing? And she's like, shit's kind of weird. And he was like, that's not normal.
And then they lie on the hospital bed together.
They lie on the hospital bed and he tells her what happened, because she's like, tell me what you did. And he's like, I really think it's better if I don't. And she's like, no, motherfucker, you owe me. So he tells her and she's like, you fucking what? What did you do? Can you hear that cat scratching at the door?
That's hilarious.
I'm gonna let her
Cats
in.
Are so funny.
Because otherwise this is gonna be But yeah, and she's upset because like her brain's different now, but she also like kinda into it in a way. But the interesting part and what led me here, I'm so sorry guys, was that he makes the comment that being paired with her will always hurt him, because the other thing that happens with fusions is you're able to access the high language, and high language is is your ability to speak with someone you're bonded with, and it's so intimate, it's so specific that there's no way to describe it. At one point he asks her to describe what music is saying, and she said, I can't, like you just feel it. And he goes, that's what high speech is like. And he will never, this thing that is fundamental, can you like stop making
Maria has
noise?
Cats, that's what the noise you guys are hearing.
I'm so sorry guys, she's real needy all of a sudden. But this thing that is integral to having these relationships that completes this kind of a relationship for his species, he can never have with her. So it's always going to be like, because you literally end up in each other's minds, and he's always going to be isolated from Cora's mind. And Cora makes the comment, well, that's how humans do it all the time. We only survive with English and having to speak through all the stuff. And he's like, but I'm not human. And that for me was just like, as much as I was like, yes, alien mind wedding, it also was really fucking sad, because it's like they're never going to fully understand each other. They're never going to completely know each other. There's always going to be a huge giant ass rift between the two of them. And for him, I think it's going to be more painful, but for Cora, it's like this is what relationships are like for humans. You're never in the other person's head. You're always alone.
Well, okay, so I think probably this is going to follow a pretty natural trilogy arc where it gets worse in the second book, and then in the third book they do kind of get like, I do think at some point they'll be able to close this gap. The thing is that, like, Ampersand is coming at this from the viewpoint of an alien who doesn't really see humans as persons and doesn't really even know that he didn't even really know it was biologically possible for that's Maria's cat, guys.
Hi, meet
For those for podcast listeners only, Maria's cat is just an ambulatory orange rug who
Goodbye,
is very attention needy. Okay, what was I saying? Yeah, I don't think it's an insurmountable thing, but I also could see Lindsay Ellis going in a tragic direction with it. And I do kind of trust her to write the intricacies of how weird this can be. Because initially, I think I was about like a third to halfway through, I was like, okay, I kind of know what's going to happen. They're gonna bond with High Speech, and the book is gonna end. I just kind of assumed naturally the book was gonna end kind of actiony and happy. And it doesn't. It really ends there's a lot of twists and a lot of emotional landscape that's charted out and explored. So I could see it ending poorly in the end, but I could also see there being some kind of work done in that regard.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to the next book.
Me too.
We're probably going to release this podcast right as it comes out, so we're already reading it in Futureland, so I'm happy about that. Again, this has been my favorite book we've done so far. Well, not my favorite book. Besides Dune, this has been my favorite book.
I think Spinning Silver is obviously my favorite book. I love that book a lot, which is hysterical because they're very different. But this, I would say, is my second favorite. And because it was a first read, it had that special first time glow to it that Spinning Silver, doesn't have for me anymore.
You mean Spinning Silver has lost its silver sheen?
Go away.
That's right. I'm hilarious.
But yeah, I hope she doesn't, I hope they can never speak in high language. Now, let me rephrase this. The Maria who would read fan fiction for the candy wants it.
Fan fiction me wants the tragedy and the angst of them.
Yeah, this is the difference between me and you as fan fiction readers. I just want happy comfort and good things, and you want, you and Katie, you like your sad
angst,
shit, man.
Angst, tragedy. I don't like it to end tragic, but I do want a lot of angst and tragedy to get there. And also, I think there's an extent to which Ampersand doesn't understand that he can change to be, he's thinking that only High Speech is the only way for them to communicate and get that closeness. And I don't think he necessarily understands that, he can change to a more human mode of interaction.
And Rational Maria hopes that High Speech never happens. I want that heart sore divide, as a rational adult. I want that. That's what I want to read. Either way she goes, I'm going to be happy. I'm going to acknowledge the missed potential if she goes happy candy route, but I would still read the fuck out of it. But at that point, it would feel more like I'm reading it for the sake of fan fiction's sake, rather than this is where I'd actually like the story to go. Because I have that with Last of the Mohicans. I love that Uncas and Alice die, but that there's this hint of...
Yes, just a hint.
Just a hint of...
by the way, that wasn't in the original script. They were supposed to talk more and be more romantic.
No, they were supposed to have a couple...
The actress's mom was like, no, she is way too young for this, so it's all in implied looks.
God.
And yeah, no, my mom said that about the movie hilariously, and I was like,
good.
You're not the only one.
And then I read fan fiction because as much as I love that ending and how it happened, I wanted the candy experience, but no, that's the way the movie should be. So it's one of those experiences. If she goes happy candy route, I'm gonna enjoy it, but I maybe should have just gotten that enjoyment out of fan fiction, which there's only 8. There's only 8 fan fictions, guys.
Look, I was telling Maria, there's 8 on AO3, which is just criminal.
Fucking criminal.
But also, if Cora had been a dude, let's be real, it would be in the thousands at this point.
/ fanfiction.
Fanfiction is one of the least heteronormative places in the world. And this, specifically anything, it's not even gay guys, it's just anything having to do with women is not popular in fan fiction. Let's be real for a minute here. That's actually the big impediment.
Man, I wish there was a lot of I would read the shit out of the fan fiction for this. Maybe because they know the second book is coming out.
Well, the other thing is that fan fiction is about fixing gaps and plugging holes, so to speak, in canon. And in this one, their relationship is...
Oh, plugging all the holes.
Oh, again. fingers that can change shape. So like in this respect, like this is a relationship that's really well explored. So it's not like it's something that you feel a burning emotional, like, okay, I gotta figure out what happens next, or I gotta experience more of this feeling or delve into it more. Also, fan fiction for singular books actually is almost never popular.
Yeah, that's
almost always series that have large amounts of fan fiction.
So we'll see. I'm interested to see what happens after the second, and then eventually, is there a third book? Is it a trilogy?
Yeah, it's going to be a trilogy.
Yeah, comes out, and we see what happens with that. But overall, like, this book did exactly what I wanted it to as I was reading it. Sometimes you look at a book afterwards and you're like, you know, if it would have done these other things, it would have been great. But as I was reading it, and again, I didn't know going in that I wanted an alien romance. The beginning of the intimacy, I remember telling Katie, no, there's no romance. I don't even know two characters that would.
That's so funny, because I knew going in that's what was going to happen.
No.
And I don't think I've listened to her interviews, or like I just assumed that was what was going to happen.
I had no idea. Once I realized what was happening, I started looking up videos to be like, am I reading this right? Is this where it's going? And it was like, yes, congratulations, alien romance. But initially, it literally smacked me in the face. Something happened, and I was like, wow, she's really into his eyes. We had a lot of descriptions about how amazing and beautiful.
The voice actress's voice gets really soft and emotional when she's talking. That's weird.
Yeah, and so I was like, what is this? And then I was like, yes, this is the greatest thing. And then from that point on, the book did exactly what I wanted it to. And I had enjoyed it because I texted Will my whole time reading this. And even before I realized the romance was happening, I was like, I like this book. This book is fun.
Yeah, I remember.
And that's what I have to say.
I really enjoyed it. I really did. I really loved the world building. I was pretty there for the relationship, though again, maybe not as much as Maria. I think there are some things that could be fixed. It's interesting because in an interview, Lindsay Ellis talked about how like there's this weird perception of writing as a thing that's unchanging, and that your debut book has to be perfect, and that writing isn't a thing you get better at over time. And so, like, I think that's a fair way of viewing this, is that, yeah, this is a first book, so there are things about it that I don't think are perfect, but I think as a whole, it has that vital energy that I really like in a book.
Yep.
And it does what it wants to really well, so...
Super excited for the second book. I cannot wait to read it.
Anyway, we will talk to you all later. Hopefully, next week we will be doing the sequel, Truth of the Divine, and we will see what shapes his fingers can turn into. Goodbye.
Goodbye.